From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. I'm Tyne Morgan, and here's what's in store over the next 60 minutes. The Senate finally releases the long-awaited Farm Bill.
And we've been pushing hard all year, saying that agriculture needs an updated Farm Bill with the economy the way it is.
With 1,400 pages of text, why it's getting lambasted for timing and details. More signs of trouble in the ag economy with new words of warning.
It's really dire in farm country right now.
As farmers look to cut back, sometimes it's more about becoming more efficient than it is cutting costs.
This technology, it's like it was built for our farm.
And the beloved McRib is back, a sandwich that was born in the Midwest. The story behind the McRib coming up on U.S. Farm Report. The Senate this week releasing its long-awaited version of the Farm Bill. The 5-year Rural Prosperity and Food Security Act includes $39 billion in new resources, with $20 billion to strengthen the farm safety net and establish permanent disaster assistance so emergency relief releases farmers faster. $8.5 billion to improve access to nutrition assistance and $4.3 billion to improve quality of life in rural communities. We'll have more on the bill and whether work on it can get done by the end of the year coming up in our Farm Journal report. The Biden administration is also urging Congress to pass a $100 billion disaster relief spending bill. Nearly half of the funding would go towards FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund. The bill also includes funding for other agencies, including the Department of Agriculture, Transportation, and the Small Business Administration. The request comes as Americans in the Southeast are still cleaning up from major back-to-back hurricanes Helene and Milton. And more aid for producers in need, with USDA launching $2 billion in aid for specialty crops and disaster recovery. The money would come from the department's Commodity Credit Corporation. It would support domestic supply and market expansion for fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Additionally, $140 million will fund the Commodity Storage Assistance Program. It's aimed at restoring crop storage infrastructure lost to natural disasters this year. That's particularly in southeastern areas where producers had the damage following hurricanes Debbie, Helene, and Milton. Well, more layoffs for John Deere, but these appear to be temporary. Several news agencies are reporting that John Deere will temporarily idle its plants in Ottumwa, Iowa. The shutdown will occur from early next month through early January. The plant manufactures hay and forage equipment. The Des Moines Register reporting the plant employs less than 400 people. Deere telling the Register it balances work with projected demand for its products, calling it an inventory adjustment shutdown. The American Farm Bureau Federation is releasing its annual look at the cost of Thanksgiving dinner. And it may not feel like it, but Farm Bureau says overall this year, Americans will actually be paying less. It says a feast for 10 would come out to $58.08, or about $5.80 per person. That's a 5% drop from last year, but it says the meal is still 19% higher than what you paid in 2019. The centerpiece of it all, of course, is the turkey, and that helped bring down the overall cost of the dinner this year. Well, parts of the country getting their first taste of winter this week. We'll have a check of your weather coming up next.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Pioneer. Advanced genetics and rigorous local testing combine to make Pioneer brand corn the leader in the industry. For game-changing yields and a winning season, your best year starts with Pioneer. U.S. Farm Report weather is brought to you by H&S Manufacturing. The Big Dog forage boxes feature stainless steel sides, front panel, and rear door and come in 26 and 30-foot models to fit your needs. Learn more at the H&S website.
Well, parts of the country getting their first taste of winter this week with a power winter storm called the bomb cyclone hitting the northwest. Large parts of Washington state and Oregon were blanketed with snow, with rain and snow continuing this week from another storm moving ashore. And heavy snow and blizzard conditions were also seen in the northern plains, with snow spotted in the Midwest as well as the Great Lakes. Winter seems to be here. Jack Van Meter has his latest forecast. Jack?
Taking a look at the current drought monitor that just came out, we're seeing a couple different changes throughout the country. We're seeing a lot of improvement with the drought conditions, but at the same time, some areas that have been a little more stubborn have dried out just a little more. So let's go ahead and walk through it from the East Coast going out west. So starting again with the East Coast, we are still seeing levels of very, very dry conditions, especially down there in New Jersey and up to Massachusetts as well. We're actually seeing some severe and extreme levels of drought. Good news is there is a system on the way that will provide some relief, but unfortunately won't solve all the problems. Moving out to the Midwest and parts of the Great Plains as well, we can see a lot of improvement in parts of the Heartland and Midwest, where actually we've been seeing multiple systems move through and really deliver some really beneficial rainfall. We've seen totals 1 inch, 2 inch, even 3 inches of just good soaking rain out there. Just a lot of systems moving through. Great news there. Now for the not so good news. As we make our way out west, we can see up here by the Dakotas that the extreme drought has really started to spread west and parts of the south as well. So just keep that in mind. And unfortunately, southwest Texas, again, really, really dry there with actual exceptional drought and actually some extreme drought situations starting to form out there in western Arizona as well. Here's a look at our jet stream and actually a fairly quiet picture for much of the country going into this weekend and actually next week as well. Take a look at this. Very, very slight high pressure ridging occurring in the middle part of the country. And we do have a bit of a trough, a bit of that low pressure system starting to ride off the northern part of the trough, but really not affecting parts of the deep south or even Great Plains as well. It's not until next week where we start to see some more pronounced troughing, especially up there in Canada, start to dig down where we can see our next burst of moisture for much of the country and a return to some cooler air as well, just to keep that in mind. Here's our estimated rainfall for the next week. Again, very, very light. We're not seeing any major systems move through the country until the end of the week, where we can see a nice slug there of 1 inch of rain, really going to be helping with those situations as well. And here's that precipitation outlook. Again, looking like going to be mainly over there in Colorado. We'll be seeing some more pronounced rainfall.
Thanks, Jack. Well, some good news for corn demand, but a U.S. dollar that continues to post strength. We'll look at the impact that it's having on the markets. That's with Chip Nellinger and Matt Bennett next. Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. Chip Nellinger and Matt Bennett joining us for our marketing roundtables. Okay. There's a lot of news happening right now. I mean, we're looking at what's going to happen with Trump on trade. We're looking at a strengthening U.S. dollar. We're talking about better weather in Brazil and the impact it's having on the crop there. But Chip, I want to start with you. What do you think the market is watching at this point?
Well, I think two things mainly. Number one is basis improvement. We've got a lot of upfront demand on corn and beans, both really good demand. But then as you look forward, we get to about January, February, especially on bean demand, it falls off the cliff. Brazil becomes much cheaper. And right now there is no threat in the forecast as far as Brazilian production goes. And it looks like they're on track as of today for a 6+ billion bushel bean crop. So that's kind of the fight I see is near term, really good demand, strong basis, longer term, potential massive Brazilian bean crop. And that push and pull is really what's kind of affecting the market right now.
Yeah, Matt, Chip mentioned that demand. I had a farmer text me last Friday and he goes, what the heck is going on with corn demand right now? Basis is phenomenal. The buyer just called me and said, give me as much old crop as you can. He sold out of old crop. So what is going on with basis right now, and how should farmers be taking advantage of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that whenever you get the bin door closed, a lot of times the farmer really doesn't want to step in and sell much there. Of course, a lot of folks that have it in commercial storage are locked in either till Dec 1 or Jan 1. And if it's Jan 1, I mean, good luck getting them to, move on that, because they've got a minimum amount that they paid in for storage. And so there's no question that this basis has really caught fire. I mean, what you got to look at as a grower is, as far as futures are concerned, you're 45 cents off the lows, or we've been trading in that neighborhood. Yeah, that was back in August. But whenever we look at the move in futures, yes, maybe it's not exactly what the grower wants, but when you add to that basis appreciation, which for some folks has been anywhere from 20 to 40 cents, your flat cash price is significantly better than what we've seen previously. So yes, strong demand. Export sales have been pretty good. Shipments have actually been pretty decent for this time of year. And then ethanol corn grind has just been really out of this world the last couple 3 weeks. And so demand's been quite strong, and that's one thing that's really driving this basis.
Yep. Chip, let's talk about wheat for a second. Because as we talked about in news, there has been a war premium back into the market. I mean, the fact that we're even talking right now about a nuclear war, and outside of that, are we going to see wheat prices shift much based on what's happening between Russia and Ukraine? Just crazy that we're still talking about this more than 1,000 days into this situation. But you look here in the U.S. too, we've had some nice moisture in winter wheat country as well. So what is your outlook on wheat?
Yeah, wheat has been an easy sell for the funds, and on any rally that you've seen in the wheat market for going on 3 years, it has paid greatly to sell that rally. And I think the uncertainty of these next 2 months, 2.5 months, until the new administration comes into office, with the escalation in between Russia and Ukraine, barring the worst case scenario, and that being a nuclear strike. And I really don't think that is in the cards. Let's hope it's not anyway. That I think this is just some normal short covering. The funds don't like that type of uncertainty. I think they're getting out of some shorts. Maybe that can lift us a little bit into a month end and maybe year end. But there's no shortage of the newly harvested crop in the southern hemisphere. And you mentioned we got pretty good rain in a lot of dry areas. That's going to help that wheat in the United States go into dormancy in pretty good shape. And so I think right now you have to kind of assume that it's still a bounce to sell. Could there be a little more upside? Yes, as the funds get out of some shorts, but we've got a no shortage of supply right now, it appears, in the world.
Okay, Matt, then looking at corn, wheat, and soybeans. Out of those three, which do you think has the best potential to see at least price improvement over the next 6 months?
I mean, I'd have to say corn. I'm not outright bullish. I think some of the things that we would all talk about on soybeans might hold us back somewhat. And you're talking huge stocks worldwide, U.S. But whenever you look at corn, yes, demand has been fantastic. Yes, some of this was front loaded, but at the same time, we've seen some folks in here buying corn that don't typically do so. Again, ethanol margins are not fantastic right now, but grind has been excellent due to pretty darn good hedging from that sector. Here's the thing: if exports and ethanol come in like they might, you might be looking at chiseling this 195 carry down to something south of 1.8, and who knows? Maybe the yield gets adjusted again. But if I was going to be guessing out of those three, I've got way more reasons to think that the corn market would rally than what the other two would.
All right, a lot of talk about the cattle on feed report on Friday, but what is the outlook for cattle prices? We're going to ask both Matt and Chip that when we come back.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Chip Nellinger and Matt Bennett rejoining us. And we're talking about cattle prices before USDA's cattle on feed report came out late Friday afternoon. But the expectation headed into that cattle on feed report that we would see inventory down just slightly from a year ago at 11.944 million head as of November 1st. But when you look at right now, what will be driving cattle prices? A lot of questions on when we will rebuild. We're seeing moisture enter some of these key cattle production areas lately. Chip, I will start with you. What do you think your outlook is for cattle prices in 2025?
Well, I think there's a lot of optimism built in currently, right? And there's a lot of hope that the cash market's going to continue and push above 190 and have this, great effect and rally the futures. I would tell you this: going into the end of the year, the funds have a massive long position up. There's a lot of optimism out there around stronger cash prices. I'm a little fearful, though, that we've already started, due to these high prices, to cut into demand a little bit. Obviously, the U.S. consumer, with inflation, has been pinched a little bit here. There hasn't been much talk about it and about these potential tariffs. Mexico is not out of the woodwork yet on having potential tariffs on top of that the Chinese tariffs, which are likely coming in January, possibly February, they've been, obviously Mexico's a huge player in our both pork and beef exports, but China very quietly over the last couple of years has become very large as well. So I think that the cattle market, there could be some upside. I'm not saying that, but I think bigger picture, you got to assume, and I do, that we're towards the upper end of the range in here. But the first of the new year will tell you more. I'm just fearful that we're starting to build the numbers, not necessarily the cattle herd itself, but that the demand's a little bit shaky and the numbers are big enough that it could cap us going forward.
Yeah, I mean, and Matt, how resilient demand had been has really been the story of 2024. But you look as we close out 2024 and head into 2025, do you agree with Chip?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Whenever you look at, like Chip said, the funds have been long. I think the funds have kind of grown weary of this long position. And, here's the thing. I'm not saying they can't push this thing higher. I think a lot of folks felt like we'd see even tighter numbers this fall than what we've seen on cattle on feed and placements. They just haven't materialized. I mean, you look at the National Drought Monitor, and it'll tell you that there's still some pastures that need some more rainfall. No doubt we've had rain in wheat country and cattle country, but do we need more before next spring? And to really feel good that someone's going to say, hey, I'll go ahead and put this heifer out on pasture, maybe we can build numbers then. Here's the thing. And if you're going to offer someone for 400 pounders, people are talking $1,600 plus. I mean, it's unbelievable to get $4 a pound for a feeder. I don't know. I just feel like this cattle market has got more risk to the downside than to the upside. So, if I'm sitting on a couple feedlots full of cattle, if nothing else, put a floor under them, because again, I mean, what do you have to gain here? If this market rolls over like it did last year, I don't think it will, like $35 drop. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. If the funds decide to puke, this thing could be really rough. So my personal opinion here is to stay as protected as what you possibly can. It doesn't mean that you're, bearish. It just means that you're being smart on a business perspective.
Matt Bennett, Chip Nellinger, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll check in with Machinery Pete next.
We're headed to Colorado on Tractor Tales this week, folks, to visit Tyson Hansen and learn about his John Deere Beat.
And this is a 1935. We bought it unknowing if it would run or not. It's been sitting in the shed for 15 or so years, and we took carb off right away and sent it off to be rebuilt, got it back, and went to put water in it. Noticed it was leaking a little. Next thing you know, we take it out inside, went to start it, and started up. After a couple attempts, got the carb set somewhat. Next thing you know, it was just peeing water everywhere. It was about worse than a garden hose. And so we shut it off, trying to figure out where water's coming from. Well, look at the radiator. It looked like the fan hit the radiator at one point, and there was about a half inch to an inch hole right in the center, and all the fins are bent up. But it's something for me to learn. That's what I love about these old tractors. Like, I can always learn something off of them. My dad's taught me so much, and if it wasn't really for him, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Most of these tractors, we bought them all non-running. Every tractor's different. One thing I always did think was unique about this bee, though, is if you look at all the other drawbars, they all have like a hitch pin hole. Well, this one has a, I don't know what you call it, but it's meant for being used on horse-drawn implements instead of like implements that you have today where it's just a pin. Their hitches are a little bit different. I can't tell you exactly. I've never been a big horse implement kind of guy. I've always been in tractors, but it's something that's just unique that I like about it.
Still to come, as we told you at the top of the show, the long-awaited Senate Farm Bill is finally here. So why is the bill pretty much dead on arrival? That's our Farm Journal report coming up next.
You're watching U.S. Farm Report. Trusted, timely, tradition.
Well, Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow of Michigan released her own version of the Farm Bill a few days ago, with many ag groups calling the bill proposed during the lame duck session lame. Others wonder if it will even make it to a vote. Michelle Rook dives into the 1,400-page bill and whether anything can get done with it before the end of the year in this week's Farm Journal report. Michelle?
Tyne, many ag policy experts tell me it's highly unlikely a new farm bill can move during the lame duck session. The GOP leadership on the Senate Ag Committee has already been highly critical of the text. Plus, there's only a few weeks left to get a Senate version reconciled with the House, conferenced and scored before it could even be scheduled for a vote. So we're likely looking at another extension for a year or maybe even longer. The 5-year Rural Prosperity and Food Security Act includes $39 billion in new resources. Farm CPA Paul Neiffer says there are some big differences compared to the House bill on ARC and PLC programs and reference prices, which would be calculated using a simple 5-year average instead of the current Olympic average.
They actually are going to automatically allow farmers to get the highest of the 23 and 24, either ARC or PLC, so that is helpful. They did bump reference prices across the board at 5%, but we know on the House bill, they bumped them 10 to 20%. So this is an automatic 5%. They did expand the payment limit for the ARC up to 12.5% from the current 10%, but then they put a 15% restriction on the PLC.
Neiffer says farmers can get part of their PLC or ARC payment ahead, which is also beneficial. However, base acre updates are capped and apply to only underserved and disadvantaged farmers.
The limit is 160 acres per farm, and if from 2025 to 2029, if an underserved farmer is not operating those acres, then it looks like those base acres disappear and goes back to the old base acres.
One positive is for 2024, there's a provision to reimburse up to $20,000 of crop insurance NAP premiums per producer. Another positive is the emergency relief program would be made permanent from 2025 to 29.
They're trying to make it so we don't have to have these ad hoc programs. This is a program designed to automatically pay the farmer what they need.
But he says adjusted gross income limits drop from $900,000 to $700,000, and that applies to landowners and tenants cash renting ground. So Neiffer says many of the proposals seem to penalize production ag. The National Pork Producers Council is also disappointed the bill fails to address California's Prop 12 pork production standards.
That's really the top issue that I hear from our farmers is that concern about Prop 12. And more specifically, a patchwork of regulations that could happen if there isn't some type of solution to Prop 12.
And the American Farm Bureau says producers can't afford to wait for federal policy to help them after a 30% drop in farm income in 2 years.
And we've been pushing hard all year, saying that agriculture needs an updated farm bill with the economy the way it is. Commodity prices are below cost of production, and we need that farm bill updated.
The bigger question is, can the bill even advance in the lame duck? 4 issues are holding back possible movement. One is nutrition spending, 2 is conservation spending, and 3rd, the commodity program.
It's the Midwestern commodities versus the Southern commodities, and the level of income support versus perhaps the level of crop insurance support that is desired. And then the 4th is how to pay for some of those proposed improvements to the bill, and that's the Secretary's authority over CCC spending.
Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar posted on X that Senator Stabenow released a strong farm bill proposal, and Congress can and should pass the farm bill this year. The problem is Senate Ag Committee ranking Republican John Bozeman has already criticized this last-ditch effort, saying, quote, an 11th hour partisan proposal released 450 days after the expiration of the current farm bill is insulting. America's farmers deserve better, end quote.
It's really dire in farm country right now.
But Congress is running out of time to get a farm bill done in the lame duck, and many blame Senator Stabenow. A stealth farm bill is being pushed by some farm state lawmakers that would increase reference prices and some crop insurance reimbursements, but it's a long shot. So another extension of the 2018 bill may be likely.
We've got to work out the full year appropriations or some sort of another continuing resolution. And there's a lot of interest in some sort of ad hoc or supplemental emergency assistance. I think without a doubt, they have to extend it in this lame duck. for another year.
The Farm Bill process restarts with a new Congress and ag committees, but the Democrats could use Stabenow's text as a marker.
I would not be surprised that Senator Klobuchar would pick up the mantle if she assumes the role of ranking member and has a proposal for a farm bill that looks very much like this.
The fear, though, is that a farm bill is likely to take a backseat to other congressional priorities and the agenda of the new administration in 2025.
Pushing this off makes trying to fund it harder and harder the longer we go.
Given what I expect, which is a big reconciliation tax cut budget effort, it's hard to imagine that if a farm bill is not included in that there wouldn't have to be yet another extension.
Which could push a new farm bill all the way into 2026. I'm Michelle Rook for U.S. Farm Report.
Well, Brazil has signed 37 new agreements with its biggest trading partner, China. We'll have those details coming up in Ag Around the World next.
Introducing Unscripted with Tyne Morgan and Clinton Griffiths. Real, raw, and entertaining. A new episode is available every Friday on Farm Journal's YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Now for a glimpse of Ag Around the Globe. Brazil has signed several new agreements with its biggest trading partner, China. The two countries signed 37 trade deals covering agriculture, tech cooperation, trade and investments, infrastructure, industry, energy, as well as mining. Included were sanitary and phytosanitary agreements for beef, pork, and fruits similar to those agreed last year on corn and soybeans. Fran Olson, an extension crop specialist with North Dakota State University, says China has decided to lessen its dependence on the U.S. since the 2018 trade war.
So now they're looking for diversification. And the easiest path, especially for China, has been to go to Brazil for not only soybeans, but also an increase in corn, as well as now some of the meat product.
Olson says financially, China can't shut out U.S. imports, especially on soybeans, even though politically that may be their goal. French protesters taking to the streets to protest a potential trade deal between the EU and countries in South America. Farmers fear that will increase competition for French farmers. The countries include Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And both sides are pushing for trade negotiations to wrap up by the end of the year. These protests by French farmers were the largest since they took part in demonstrations last winter over concerns about cheaper imports and increased regulations. At one point, tractors briefly blocked part of a highway near Paris. Others dropped manure in front of the government buildings, and one dairy farmer says they have the same demands as they did over the winter and that nothing has changed. Well, one of the most veteran senators has some strong words about the latest farm bill just released this week. That's Chip's Corner coming up next. Welcome back to Chip's Corner this weekend. Chip Flory joining us. Well, we've already been talking about the Senate version of the farm bill in the show this weekend. But Chip, as Chairwoman Stabenow promised, she did release the text of the farm bill, but a lot of scrutiny out there, some saying it's too little, too late. And as they dig into the more than 1,400 pages, there's a lot of ag groups saying that this is pretty much dead on arrival at this point.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the timing is just so weird, isn't it? Why did we wait so long? Why did Senator Stabenow wait so long? We're 400 and some days past the expiration of the 2018 Farm Bill. We're into this, what looks like it's going to be a second year of an extension of that 2018 bill. And then why bringing up just as a lame duck Congress is coming back to the office, and not only a lame duck Congress, but it's a Senate that is going to change leadership in the new Congress. So it all seemed really strange, but Tyne, because she did deliver a text from the Senate Ag Committee, and we've got the bill that the House passed earlier, there was some optimism that maybe that means the two sides were going to be able to get together and get something done. So I had a conversation with Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa earlier this week, and I flat out asked him, is there a chance that you can get this bill done by Christmas?
But I just think it's very unrealistic to think that Republicans now controlling the House next time, in the Senate next time, would be willing to compromise with Democrats now when we can have a Republican written bill next year, or I should say a Republican-led bill, but it'd be a bipartisan bill.
Yeah, Tyne, that triggered a memory from a conversation that I had with Joni Ernst, the other U.S. senator from Iowa, earlier this year. The conversation, it was probably about 4 months ago. And basically at that time, what she indicated, or at least hinted, was that maybe it's time to tap the brakes on the farm bill. And that came at a time when the Republican senators were starting to feel some momentum for the GOP in other Senate races, and it was starting to look more likely that the Senate was going to, that the GOP was going to get control of the Senate. And now it looks like that's exactly how it's going to play out. We're going to get, according to the comments from Grassley, we're going to get another extension. Bozeman from Arkansas is going to have an opportunity to put his signature on this bill going forward, is what it looks like.
I understand the momentum because of the GOP being in control, but at the same time, Chip, there's a lot of challenges as we enter 2025. I mean, all the talk is about financial cuts, budget cuts, cutting. And you look about this massive bill. To me, it is not an easy win, even when, the new Congress comes into session. There's going to be a lot of challenges, especially with the amount of spending in this bill.
Yeah, I wonder what Musk and Ramaswamy are going to have, what input they are going to have into the writing of this next farm bill. I wonder how much from the House passed bill is going to be carried over on the House side of things, or if GT Thompson from Pennsylvania, if he's going to have to start all over with a bill, Tyne. I don't know how much further this backs us up in the whole process.
Yeah, anybody's guess at this point, but it does sound like we will not see a new farm bill this year. Chip Flory joining us. You can hear him every day for AgriTalk AM as well as AgriTalk PM. Well, one Kansas farmer, Southwest Kansas farmer, is on a constant journey to innovate, and it's a certain technology that is helping him save and be more efficient. We'll have that story in Driving Technology next.
Driving Technology on U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by John Deere. No matter where your operation is with technology, John Deere can help you take the next step. Keep your farm moving forward with John Deere Tech to fit your equipment and your operation.
Doing more with less is something we talk about a lot in agriculture as farmers find new ways to farm even smarter and become even more efficient. Well, a farmer who just may be the poster child for that is Luke Jager, a farmer in Kansas who's constantly aiming to innovate, as we show you this weekend in Driving Technology. Farming in Southwest Kansas isn't for the faint of heart. Producing a crop in this arid climate can be a challenge, but this farmer is thankful for some recent rain.
The wettest November on record for us.
For an area that typically receives less than 20 inches of rain each year, Luke Jager says some of his farms have seen 6 inches of rain during the month of November alone.
Which is crazy this time of year.
It's much needed moisture the winter wheat crop is soaking up, and it's also planting ideas for different crop plants next spring.
I was just talking with our local dealer here about how on our farm, for the first time ever, we will probably plant more dryland corn than we will grain sorghum because of the subsoil moisture we have in the grounds.
Jager and his brother farm 20,000 acres across Southwest Kansas, growing a mix of corn, sorghum, soybeans, and wheat, most of which is dryland.
Every year my brother and I, Matthew, were partners, and we kind of like to take a 30,000 foot approach and poke holes in our operation. And where are we spending too much money? Where can we save?
A never-ending journey to solve problems on their own farm, they started EGE Products to manufacture specialty ag chemicals and fertilizers.
I like to say our farm is a 20,000 acre research farm. In our office, we have a full-scale laboratory with formulation chemists, PhD chemists, chemical engineers. So we see problems on the farm and we bring them back to our formulations team and we try to work on solutions.
With the farm to then put those products to the test, Jaeger says they're constantly innovating.
I think if you're not innovating, you're dying. If you're not, a lot of people bristle at adopting newer technologies, and we just dive right into it and go.
Diving right into the latest technology, one of the latest products they decided to try wasn't something they produced on their own. Instead, it was added to this.
It's like that technology was built for our farm.
John Deere's See & Spray.
We didn't approach See & Spray technology to specifically reduce costs. A lot of it for us was reducing the toxicity of some of the chemicals that we were using on the farm.
Jaeger says they run their sprayer 11 months out of the year here, and he's the one who's typically in the driver's seat.
I put about 600 hours a year in the seat of one of our sprayers, and I don't like paraquat. And what See & Spray has allowed us to do, chemistries that perform the same, but they were a little too expensive, it has allowed us to integrate that chemistry more into our operation.
Instead of looking at technology as a way to save on cost, Jaeger says it's a way to do a more effective job.
And I've found that we're going out earlier more often than we normally would. A lot of times you want to wait. If you're going to blanket spray, you want to wait till, you know, there's enough out there to justify the application. And for us, we don't have to wait because we know maybe we're only going to spray 5% of the field.
In this area of Kansas, the Jaegers had to transition to nearly 100% no-till, a necessity to control wind erosion.
But a lot of farmers have had to abandon no-till because it's just too expensive. And with resistant weeds, it became harder and harder to control those resistant weeds. But with this technology, I think we're going to see more farmers coming back into no-till because they can cost effectively control those weeds.
In 2011, it was kochia that Roundup would no longer control.
And now we've got a pretty good handle on kochia, but it's pigweeds that are my biggest nemesis right now.
Pigweed and resistant grasses like switchgrass, those have become Jaeger's yearly battle.
What this See & Spray technology allows us to do is run a more concentrated spray mixture, a high rate of glyphosate or clethodim, but we're only spraying that particular weed, not the whole field. So we can run a higher rate of that chemical, get way better control, and our costs are still very minimal because we're only spraying that target weed that's out there.
Farming smarter while always trying to innovate. The Jaegers say it's technology like this that seem to have a perfect fit here in Southwest Kansas.
Like I said, this technology, it's like it was built for our farm.
By the way, we did ask Jaeger about harvest this fall. They had some moisture last year, not as much as they've recently received, but the issue this past year for their crop was hail. He told us they lost half of their corn and all of their soybeans to hail last year. Well, when we come back, it's a fast food fan favorite, and if you love the McRib, well, you have won Land Grant University to thank for that. We'll tell you why next. Well, Christmas is coming early for some of you. The beloved McRib sandwich is back, but the birthplace of the McRib, well, it may surprise you. McDonald's is bringing back its McRib sandwich just in time for the holidays. Just how popular is this McRib? Well, according to the Wall Street Journal, they sold 60 million sandwiches in just 3 years. The McRib, which is made from pork shoulder, was actually created at the University of Nebraska. In the 1970s, the National Pork Producers Council asked a meat scientist there to create a product with pork trimmings, one that could be sold by a fast food chain. This was before the pork checkoff was even established. The meat scientist used salt to extract proteins from the muscle, and those proteins then helped hold the smaller pieces of meat together.
We have over 100 years of tradition of meat science. Technology behind the McRib was developed at University of Nebraska, identifying the flat iron steak, are a couple things that some of my predecessors and emeriti faculty from our department worked on.
Well, and if you love the smoky flavor, McDonald's is also selling its McRib sauce in half-gallon jugs, but that won't be in time for Thanksgiving. Speaking of Thanksgiving, from helping others in times of need to giving away the very grain they grow, Rural America is stepping up to make a difference. And next weekend, we'll share their stories and honor the history of life on the farm. That's part of our annual Harvest of Thanks. So we hope you join us next weekend for that special as we work to build on our tradition. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.